As part of the present administration's efforts to curtail the spread of coronavirus COVID-19 ravaging the country and the world at large, Edo State Ministry of Education, in collaboration with Edo Broadcasting Service (EBS) and Academic Staff Union of Secondary Schools (Asuss), is organizing a television program for students in senior secondary schools, particularly those writing the West African Senior School Certificate Examination (WASSCE), the National Examination Council (NECO), and National Business and Technical Examination Board (NABTEB) for the year 2020 in the months of May, June, and July. The program will be held on EBS television channel every day from 12 noon to 1 p.m. beginning from Monday, April 6, 2020. The subjects selected for these programs are Mondays Mathematics, Tuesdays English Language, Wednesdays Physics, Thursdays Biology, Fridays Geography, Saturdays Civic Education and Economics, and Sunday Chemistry. Parents and guardians are therefore advised to draw the attention of their children or wards to this opportunity during the stay-at-home period.
Good day, viewers at home, particularly our certificate classes of SS Theory and Vocational Theory. I hope you have been enjoying our classes on air. Then quickly join me to thank the Edo State government, who always has the interest of our students at heart, Edo State Ministry of Education, and of course the Academic Staff Union of Secondary Schools in Edo State. I'm Pastor Idahusa Noma. In our economics class today, we are going to be studying the concept of demand. Under the concept of demand, we shall also be looking at the following: definition of demand, the law of demand, the demand schedule, the demand curve, different types of demand, the factors affecting demand. By way of further explanation, we'll be taking them one after the other. We will talk about the definition of demand, the law of demand, demand schedule, demand curve, types of demand, and factors affecting demand. I will try as much as possible not to be too fast so that every viewer at home can follow. So let's get seated and take off. The first question is, what is demand? As you can see on the board, demand can be defined as the quantity of goods and services that consumers are willing and able to buy at alternative prices over a given period of time. I just saw an omission, an able. So viewer at home, if you have written the definition without that able, just quickly add the able. It must be noted, however, that before we really talk of demand, three conditions must be fulfilled. One, there must be a need. Two, that need must be backed up by the ability to purchase. Then finally, three, there must be a willingness to spend resources to satisfy that goal. So like I was saying, it must be noted that before we really talk of demand, three conditions must be fulfilled. First, there must be a need. Secondly, that need must be backed up by the ability to purchase. And thirdly, there must be a willingness to spend resources to satisfy that need. When these three conditions are fulfilled, we can then say demand is effective, in which case we have effective demand. In economics, The 10 effective demand makes us to be able to differentiate between demand and want or need. A want or a need refers to mere desire for a commodity, but not backed up with the willingness and ability to pay for it. And this makes such a demand ineffective. For example, Mr. John has the money to purchase a brand new car and is able to pay for it. Then we can say Mr. John has the effective demand for the car. But if Mr. Peter, on the other hand, desires to have a motorcycle and he does not have the money to pay for it, it means Mr. Peter merely wants or needs the motorcycle, but he does not have effective demand for it. Now I want to look at the law of demand. The law of demand states that all things being equal, the higher the price, the lower the quantity of goods that will be demanded, or the lower the price, the higher the quantity of goods that will be demanded. I have put that definition on the board. But I want to add that it means that when the price of a commodity, like sanitizer, the commodity we generally need now to fight the present pandemic in the whole world, goes up, very few quantity will be demanded by the consumers and vice versa. To further explain this situation, in Edo State presently, a bottle of sanitizer sells at different prices. But you will discover that if a bottle of sanitizer, for instance, sells for 200 naira, it will attract more quantity of sales than the one that will sell for 500 naira or 1,000 naira, as the case may be. We want to also talk about the demand schedule. Demand schedule can be defined as a table showing the relationship between prices and the quantity of the commodity demanded, just as it's written on the board. It can be defined, demand schedule can be defined as a table showing the relationship between prices and the quantity of commodity demanded. There are two types of demand schedule, namely individual demand schedule and the market demand schedule. Now, we want to consider the individual demand schedule using Mr. Ben, a trader, as a case study, who has purchased several dozens of fixed mass at various prices. We are going to demonstrate this in a table. I'm going to draw the table on the board so that viewers at home will be able to follow. Like, we have two columns of it, the price per dozen and the quantity demanded as per number of dozens per week. There are various prices here. We can see 3,006, 10 dozens were bought. At 2,004, 20 dozens were bought. At 1,008, 30. At 1,002, 40. At 650. From the demand schedule, we will observe that when the prices per dozen was 3,600 naira, Mr. Ben was able to purchase just 10 dozens. But when the price per dozen dropped to 600 naira, the same Mr. Ben that purchased 10 that time was able to purchase 50 dozens. And that's Mr. Ben's demand is in consonance with the law of demand, which states, like I said before, the higher the price, the lower the quantity demanded. The lower the price, the higher the quantity demanded. Then now, I want to quickly go to market demand schedule. As it is on the board there, Okay, I didn't put that on the board, but we can also capture it from the laptop. The market demand schedule is known as aggregate or total demand schedule of all consumers of a commodity in a market. In other words, it is a table which shows the total quantities of a commodity which all consumers of that commodity are willing to buy at various prices at a particular period of time. You can see the table for the market demand schedule displayed here. It is also with face marks. And when you look at the table, you will observe that it is assumed that there are 3 consumers in this particular market. Like the first consumer is Mr. Ade, the second consumer is Mrs. Ales, the third one is Mr. Abel. And the total quantity they purchased for 1 week are reflected at the last column. Then if we come back to the first column, you will discover that when the price was 3,006, the quantity these 3 consumers purchased were 60 dozens per week. But when the price dropped to 600 naira, the quantity they purchased rose to 200 dozens. It further explains the law of demand. Quickly, we want to go to demand curve. Demand curve is a graph showing the relationship between the price and quantity of a commodity demanded. So if we look at Mr. Ben's individual demand curve, we will observe that the demand slope is going from left to right. The same thing with the market demand curve. The slope is also going from left to right. These 2 things are happening because of the law of demand, which says that the lower the price, the higher the quantity demanded, the higher the price, the lower the quantity demanded. Like if you look at the curve or the heavy curve, you will observe that the same prices that were explained in the schedule are also reflected here. Like if you look at Mr. Ben individual demand curve, when the price of face mask was 3,600, the curve came down to 10 dozens as the quantity demanded. Then when of course the price dropped to 600, the quantity demanded rose to 50 dozens. Then if you look at the market demand curve, you will also see the same explanation happening there. When the price of face masks per dozen was 3,600, the quantity demanded was 70. Then when it came down to 600, the quantity demanded rose to 200 by all the 3 consumers in the market, as explained in the demand schedule. Okay, like I was saying, we are going to be looking at the 5th subtopic, which is types of demand. We have basically 4 types. The derived demand, 2, the joint and complementary demand, 3, the competitive demand, and 4, the composite demand. What is derived demand? Derived demand is the type of demand which occurs as a result of demand for other commodities. The demand for one commodity will necessitate the demand for another commodity. For example, the demand for flour and sugar will be affected by the demand for bread. And presently, I also want us to understand that the high demand for small stroke medium empty bottles of sanitizer is because of the demand for sanitizers. like flour and sugar too. Flour and sugar, like I said before, plus the small stroke medium empty bottles are all derived demand commodities. Now, talking about joint or complementary demand. Joint demand is a demand which occurs when two commodities that are related to each other are demanded at the same time. In economics, these two commodities are said to be complementary to each other, as a change in the demand for one commodity will bring about a similar change in the demand for the other. Examples of joint demand are bread and butter, tea and milk, car and petrol. These face masks that I'm wearing and the elastic rubber that is holding it to my ears. Now, in order to explain further, you will discover that an increase in the purchase of car will lead to an increase in the quantity of fuel needed to drive such cars. 3. Competitive demand. When two demands are fairly in close substitutes to each other, they are in competitive demand. In other words, those demands, they serve the same purpose or they perform similar function, such that an increase in the demand for one will result in a fall in the demand for the other. Examples of such commodities that are in close substitutes are Bournvita and Ovaltine, Malta, Guinness and Amstel malt, almost soup and elephant soup. You see, if the price of any of these pairs of commodities is high, consumers are likely going to switch over to the other close substitutes which has a lower price. Then I want to talk about composite demand. Demand is said to be composite in nature when a commodity is required to serve two or more purposes. For example, sugar is widely used in the home for beverages, as well as in industries for making pastries and confectionaries. You see, if the industry's demand or the industrial demand for sugar suddenly increase, it will affect the quantity of sugar demanded in our homes. Then we will be going on to factors affecting demand. There are quite a number of factors affecting demand. As a matter of fact, most textbooks of economics will give you as many as 10 or 12 factors. However, in WACS or NECO exams, where a student is usually asked to list and explain factors affecting demand, at least 5 or 6 factors would do. When you try to impress on the examiner by listing over 10 factors, you may not attract extra marks. Secondly, when an examiner in an examination situation asks you to list and explain these factors, you first of all list them before you start explaining them, because in most WAEC or NECO exams, marks are apportioned for listing of the questions and explaining, listing of the items and explaining the items. For ease of remembrance, I want to introduce us to a formula. This formula will serve as mnemonic so that a student will be able to remember these 7 factors that I've identified for these factors. And the mnemonic I'm using is called the P-part. P-part. I'm going to write it on the board under the factors. P-part. P-I, P, 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 A, T. This is the mnemonic I'm using as a formula for ease of remembrance of the factors. Like the P-part I have as a formula here, if you want to go taking them one by one, P stands for price, I stands for income of consumers, the second P stands for population, the third P stands for period of festival, The last P stands for price change expectation. The A stands for advertisement, while the T stands for taxation. By way of explanation of the factors, price. The higher the price of any commodity, the lower the quantity that will be demanded, and vice versa, as we explained when we were talking about the law of demand. 2, the income of the consumers. Naturally, when a consumer's income goes up, the quantity of commodities that will be demanded by that consumer will be higher. Then, the third one there is population. Increase of population in an area will lead to a high demand of commodities and vice versa. Then we go to the fourth one, which is a period of a festival. It is a well-known fact that people demand for specific commodities during certain festivals. Viewers at home, if I may ask us, during Christmas, what is that one commodity that is usually in high demand? I know your guess will be as good as mine. Rice. So I'm sure that explains the periods of a festival. The fifth one is price changes expectation. If people expect that there will be high prices of commodities in the near future, demand for that commodity is bound to increase. They want to make some quick purchase. An example is like when there is an idea that fuel is going to be scarce. You see a lot of panic buying. People will be buying fuel into their cars. People that have never filled their car tanks, they will fill their car tanks. Some will buy into car, they will buy into jerrycans. Why is the demand for fuel increasing? It's increasing because there is a fear the price will increase. Then advertisement. A good advertisement of a commodity can lead to an increase in demand for it, and vice versa. Why does it happen like that? It happens like that because advertisement creates awareness. Some people may not know about certain products if they don't hear about it. But by the time an advert is made on such a product, you will discover that people will go out looking for it. Such a situation can bring about an increase in demand. Then taxation. An increase in taxation by the government, for instance, will mean a drop in the purchasing power of the consumers, which may result in decrease in the demand for certain commodities. What do we mean by purchasing power? You see, when we were talking about effective demand, we were talking about ability to buy. Not just willingness alone, you are willing and you can buy. When that comes about, we will now say a consumer has a purchasing power for a commodity. I wish to announce to you, viewers, that this is how far we can go today. But before I round off, I want us to quickly take at least 2 likely WAEC questions. I'll be writing this on the board for clarity purpose. Okay, so we have 2 questions there. The first one, it says distinguish between want and demand. The second one, it says state the law of demand. I know when students see questions like this, their first excitement is, what a cheap question. But what the examiner expects from you is the exact answer to the question. And that is what I am going to give you now. It's not every question in an examination situation that will demand you to write and write and write. Some are quite simple and straight to the point. And when you give it to the examiner like that, you get your full marks. So, for the first question, distinguish between want and demand. A want is a mere desire by a consumer to purchase a commodity, but not backed up with the ability to pay for it. While demand is the quantity of goods or services that a consumer is willing and able to pay for at alternative prices over a given period of time. Period. When you give the examiner such an answer, you get your full marks. Then now let's go to the second question. The second question, as it is on the board, states the law of demand. You start by saying the law of demand states that all things being equal, the higher the price, the lower the quantity that is demanded, the lower the price, the higher the quantity demanded. Viewers at home, in summary, we have been talking about the concept of demand. We started by defining demand. We went ahead to state the law of demand. We explained the meaning of demand schedule and derived a demand curve from the demand schedule. We later discussed the different types of demand and finally factors that affect demand. Viewers at home, we will be drawing the curtain here today. I want you all to watch out for more classes some other time. Goodbye.